Hey, I'm your host, Charlie, and this is Unusual Practice, the podcast that examines the weird things humans do when nobody's looking.
Dreams collided, lifting higher, east meets west in the rising sun.
Today's weird thing, falling in love with the end of the world.
We're breaking the night, chasing the light, world spins wild.
It's 2025, everything is on fire, literally and metaphorically. California keeps burning, the polar ice caps are having a proper meltdown, democracy's on life support, and your social media feed reads like the book of revelations written by a particularly pessimistic algorithm.
Elevate well up below.
And weirdly, people kind of like it.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Chasing the light.
I'm not talking about the optimists who think we'll figure it out. Those adorable unicorns still exist. Oh, bless them. I'm talking about the growing legion of collapse connoisseurs, the doomsday dilettantes, the people who've turned existential terror into a hobby. They scroll through disaster headlines like they're browsing a menu at their favorite restaurant. Ooh, mass extinction. Yes, please. Climate refugees? Let's make that a double.
I don't like you. I don't like you at all.
Like and subscribe.
We're breaking the night, chasing the
We're not just watching the end of the world anymore. We're binging it. And here's the twisted part. Recent studies show that doom scrolling triggers greater levels of existential anxiety, a feeling of dread that arises when we confront the limitations of our existence. But instead of running away from that feeling, we're running toward it. We're mainlining it.
songs through the chaos. We
Welcome to your new favorite kink, existential despair.
elevate well up below.
3, 2, 1.
This life through endless songs.
Look, I get it. You're probably thinking, hang on, you cynical little cow. People aren't enjoying the apocalypse. They're terrified. And you're right. They are terrified. But here's where it gets weird. Researchers are finding that habitual checking of disturbing stories on social media is linked with changes to how we view humankind and the meaning of life. But change isn't always bad, now is it? Sometimes it's liberation in disguise. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself deep in Wikipedia rabbit hole about societal collapse? Started with looking up, why is bread so expensive? And 3 hours later, you're reading about the fall of the Bronze Age civilization, taking notes like you're cramming for the apocalypse finals. The Germans, because of course it's the Germans, have a word for this. Weltschmerz. What's schmerz? It literally means world pain, that melancholy you feel when reality doesn't match your ideals. But they also have us on a word called schadenfreude, pleasure from others' misfortune. What happens when you combine them? Well, you get modern doom scrolling, the bittersweet pleasure of watching everything fall apart while feeling intellectually superior about predicting it. Now here's the dirty secret about collapsed porn. It's comforting. Not in everything is going to be fine way. That ship has sailed probably into a hurricane caused by climate change. It's comforting in a finally someone said it out loud kind of way. Remember when you were a kid and you'd imagine elaborate scenarios about how you'd survive if everyone else disappeared? Remember that? Zombie apocalypse, alien invasion, mysterious plague. It didn't matter. The point was you'd figure it out. You'd be the resourceful one, the survivor, the protagonist of your own post-apocalyptic novel.
Yay!
Well, congratulations. You're not imagining anymore. Anthropologist Hugh Gusterson puts it brilliantly.
The appeal of apocalyptic thinking is that it makes us feel important in a universe that otherwise makes us feel insignificant.
Exactly. Climate change makes you feel powerless. Well, at least you saw it coming. Economic inequality got you down. Hey, you've been stockpiling canned goods since 2019. You're not a victim of the collapse. You're a collapse enthusiast. You're prepared. You're ahead of the curve. You're the smartest person in the room. even if the room is metaphorically on fire. But now here's where it gets twisted. And this is the part that might make you feel uncomfortable. Collapse fantasies are liberating because they eliminate choice. All right? So let me explain myself. Modern life is exhausting precisely because of all the choices. Career, relationships, where to live, what to eat, which Netflix series to abandon after one episode. The weight of infinite possibility is crushing. But in a collapse scenario, boom! Choices made for you. Survival mode activated, priorities clarified. Look at how people talked about early COVID lockdowns. Yes, they were terrifying and tragic, but buried in all the anxiety, there were also these weird moments of relief. Oh, I can't go to that dinner party I was dreading. Pandemic. Can't travel for that work conference. Lockdown. Can't afford that expensive vacation. Economic uncertainty. The collapse made decisions for them. And for a brief, shameful moment, that felt kind of great. About 31% of American adults now doomscroll on a regular basis. That's not just staying informed. That's a relationship, a commitment, a daily ritual of voluntary despair. And we're not alone in this. While Americans are busy catastrophizing about their own decline, the Scandinavians have turned existential dread into a lifestyle brand. The Italians are perfecting the art of beautiful pessimism. The Brits, well, they have been practicing apocalyptic irony for centuries. They're like the Olympic athletes of seeing everything go to hell with a stiff upper lip. So today, we're diving deep into the psychology, the culture, and the strange twisted comfort of our collective apocalypse fetish. We'll explore why collapse feels so sexy, why doomsday preppers might be the most honest people in America, and how disaster fantasies have become the new American dream. Because if we're all going down together, we might as well understand why we're enjoying the ride. Right. Let's get into the meat of this psychological cluster shit, shall we? Because here's the first uncomfortable truth. Doom scrolling triggers the release of dopamine in the brain, making it an addictive cycle that's hard to break. Yep, you heard that right. Your brain is literally getting high off of bad news. Every alarming post sends a little shock to our system, triggering the release of dopamine in the reward center of our brains. It's like slot machines, but instead of coins, you're kind of feeding into catastrophes. The news industry figured this out decades ago, but they've perfected it into a science that would make a drug dealer weep with envy. Despite doom scrolling's focus on negative content, it still triggers dopamine release, not only from consuming the content, but also from satisfying our curiosity. Even with bad news, it provides that sweet, sweet sense of certainty, that feeling of being informed. Nothing screams foreplay like a good old societal collapse simulation on YouTube at 2 a.m. Am I right? Because that's essentially what we're doing. We're having a sexual relationship with disaster. We're edging ourselves with extinction. And speaking of edging, let's talk about what psychologists are calling the edge play of reality. The closer we get to the brink, the more alive some people feel. It's like extreme sports, but instead of jumping off cliffs, we're jumping off the cliff of civilization itself. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly, viscerally present? Yeah, probably during a crisis, right? Car accident, medical emergency, getting fired, pandemic lockdown, suddenly everything else falls away and you're just there. Hyper aware, every nerve ending firing.
Now me, I not only drink really, I really drink.
So congratulations, you've discovered that the human nervous system can't tell the difference between being chased by a saber-toothed tiger and being chased by climate change. Both make your heart race. Both make you feel intensely, primitively alive. And the French have this concept called l'appel du vide, the call of the void, that weird urge you get to jump when you're standing on a high ledge, even though you don't want to die. Remember that feeling? That's what we're doing collectively right now. We're standing on the ledge of civilization, and part of us, that lizard brain part, is whispering, what if we just let go?
Oui. Ouais.
And now, of course, here's where it gets twisted. Imagining the end is easier than imagining change. Yep, I said that. Think about that just for a little bit. Really? It's genuinely easier for most people to picture total societal collapse than to picture, say, a functioning public transportation. Why? Because apocalypse porn is the ultimate control fantasy. In your post-apocalyptic daydream, you're not stuck in middle management wondering if your job has any meaning. You're not scrolling through dating apps wondering why modern romance feels like consumer capitalism. You're not lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering if you're wasting your life. Nope. In the apocalypse, you're the competent one, the resourceful one, the one who saw it all coming. You're growing vegetables and purifying water and making tough decisions that actually matter. You're the protagonist of your own survival story, not an extra in someone else's economic system. Look at prepper culture. These aren't necessarily people who want the world to end. They're people who want agency in their own lives. And here's the beautiful irony. The worse things get, the more validated they feel. Every supply chain hiccup, every natural disaster, every political crisis is just confirmation that they were right all along. They're not victims of the collapse. They're connoisseurs of it. Now let's be honest about something else. The aesthetics are bloody magnificent. We've turned doomsday into a lifestyle brand. Post-apocalyptic fashion and runway-ready dystopian architecture is Instagram gold. We've got survival chic, cottagecore catastrophe, and what I like to call Mad Max minimalism. We used to fear nuclear war. Now we wear it as a damn jacket. Literally, military surplus is high fashion. Tactical gear is streetwear. Gas masks, they're accessories. And we're cosplaying the end of times while we're living through them. The Koreans, well, they gave us Squid Game, poverty as entertainment. The Americans gave us The Walking Dead, community through catastrophe. And the British gave us Black Mirror, great technology as horror, but with a bit of style. Every culture is processing the same anxiety, but packaging it as content. So here's what we're really talking about. Spending hours doom scrolling causes changes in your brain that drive anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive behavior, and addiction. But we keep doing it because on some level it feels better than the alternative. And the alternative being exactly what? Optimism, hope, the exhausting work of actually trying to fix things? Screw that. Give us the beautiful, terrible certainty of knowing it's all going to hell. At least then we know where we stand.
We ride the currents of the unknown tide.
Of course, this isn't the first time humans have been obsessed with their own ending. We've been writing apocalypse fan fiction since we learned how to write, which brings us to our next question. Is this a bug in human psychology, or is it a feature?
Unusual practice, breaking the mold, lighting up pathways, both new and old.
So let's get one thing straight. Humans didn't invent apocalypse anxiety when social media came along. We've been absolutely obsessed with ending things since we figured out that things could, in fact, well, end. Ragnarok in Scandinavian mythology is the end of the world of gods and men, a series of events and catastrophes that will ultimately lead to the end of the world, culminating in a final battle between the gods and demons and giants, ending in the death of the gods. But the strange thing is, the world becomes then reborn. Even the Vikings, literal professionals at violence and mayhem, couldn't imagine a proper ending without a sequel. According to the legend, the world will resurface, the surviving gods will meet, and the world will be repopulated by 2 human survivors. It's like Marvel movies, but with more mead and existential dread.
Unusual and true.
And it wasn't just the Norse. Doomsday prophecies are as old as recorded time. For as long as humans have existed, there has been this compulsive need to imagine how it all ends.
Both new and old.
The Christians gave us Revelations, which reads like someone had a really bad acid trip and decided to turn it into religious doctrine. The Hindus gave us cycles of cosmic destruction and renewal. The Mayans, well, they gave us 2012, which turned into the most anticlimactic apocalypse in human history. We used to at least have the decency to put our apocalypses in the distant future or the realm of the gods. Now, we're live streaming them.
In the dance of life.
Now, once again, it gets even more interesting. The more technologically advanced we become, the more creative we get about destroying ourselves. It's like we're in the arm race with our own imagination. Y2K was supposed to send us back to the Stone Age because computers couldn't handle the number 2000. Think about that. We genuinely believe that our entire civilization could be undone by a calendar glitch. It's like being afraid that gravity might stop working because someone forgot to wind the universe.
I'm sorry, what?
Then 2012 came along. The Mayans supposedly predicted the end of the world, except they didn't. They just ran out of space on their calendar. It's like finding a desk calendar from 1987 and assuming the world ended in December because it doesn't have dates for 1988. COVID wasn't any different. That was a real crisis that felt apocalyptic because it actually was apocalyptic, just slower and more bureaucratic than anyone expected. Instead of zombies, we got Zoom calls. Instead of Mad Max, we got Sourdough Starter and Tiger King. And how about that Pope? Looks like we got a new one, guys. But now we've got AI take over fears. We're literally afraid that we'll create something smarter than us that will, what? Replace us. As if we haven't already replaced ourselves with algorithms that decided what we eat, who we date, and what we think about.
What the hell are you talking about?
Somewhere along the way, we stopped just fearing the apocalypse and started styling it. Here's what's really happening. Each generation finds new ways to be terrified that feel more sophisticated than the last generation's fears. Our grandparents were afraid of nuclear annihilation. Instant, clean, biblical. Our parents were afraid of environmental collapse. Slow, grinding, scientific. We're afraid of everything all at once. Climate change and nuclear war and AI takeover and social collapse and economic inequality and whatever fresh hell Twitter decides to trend today. The Germans have turned anxiety into an art form. They've got words for every flavor of existential dread. The Scandinavians have turned depression into a design aesthetic. The British have turned apocalyptic humor into a cultural export. And Americans? Well, Americans have turned anxiety into a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Hey, you just got money.
We used to have prophets predicting the end of times. Now, we have Netflix series about them. We used to have religious texts about Judgment Day. Now, we have subreddits dedicated to collapsed porn where people share articles about supply chain failures like they're trading baseball cards. And here's the beautiful paradox. The faster our technology advances, the more we fantasize about losing it all. The more connected we become, the more we dream about disconnection. The more comfortable our life gets, the more we romanticize struggle and survival. It's like we know on some deep level that we're living in a historically unprecedented bubble of safety and abundance. And instead of being grateful, we're nostalgic for times when life was harder but made more sense. So we've established that humans have always been obsessed with endings, and we've established that doom feels good. So let's talk about the thing that nobody wants to admit. There's something deeply disturbingly sexual about collapse fantasies. I want you to think about that again. Remember, unusual practice. So think about that for a minute. I don't mean metaphorically sexual. I mean literally, physically, get the tissues ready sexual.
Excuse you.
Take me daddy, global warming. I know that sounds ridiculous, but think about the language we use around disaster. We talk about being ravished by storms, penetrated by crisis, consumed by chaos. We describe economics collapse as fucking us over and climate change as having its way with us. Here's what's actually happening psychologically. When human communities face destructive threats such as natural disasters or wars, their sexual instinct may aid in their survival following these crises. It's primal. It's Darwinian. When everything's falling apart, the lizard brain screams, "Time to make more humans before we all die."
I am coming for you.
But we've taken that biological imperative and turned it into entertainment. We're not actually facing saber-toothed tigers. We're facing quarterly earnings reports and climate data. So instead of having survival sex, we're having survival fantasies. And those fantasies are getting us off in ways that would make our therapists rich if we were honest about them. I want you to close your eyes and think about what I just said and really figure this out. So now let's be brutally honest about what collapse porn really is. It's a surrender fantasy. It's the ultimate submission scenario. You don't have to make decisions anymore because there are no decisions left to make. You don't have to perform competence because competence is irrelevant. You don't have to maintain your persona because society has collapsed and nobody gives a shit about your LinkedIn bio. It is liberation through annihilation, and that's kind of hot.
Damn you!
Think about the classic post-apocalyptic scenario. You plus a knife and the ruins of civilization, finally feeling something real. No more performance reviews, no more small talk at networking events, and no more pretending you understand cryptocurrency or why anyone needs 17 different streaming services. Just you, your basic survival skills, and maybe someone attractive to repopulate the earth within what used to be a Starbucks. It's the ultimate fantasy of authenticity through destruction. And now the twisted part, the sexual appeal isn't just about survival. It's about role liberation. In the collapse, you're not a middle manager or a social media coordinator or whatever soul-crushing job title you've been assigned to by this machinery of late capitalism. You're a survivor. You're essential. And you're useful.
Thank you so much.
No more LinkedIn bios, no more meetings about meetings, no more optimizing your personal brand, just scavenging and sex in a ruined mall, baby. It's like the world's most extreme career change program. Look at how we've eroticized survival culture. Preppers used to be weird hermits. Now they're influencers with abs and tactical gear sponsorships. Survivalism has been rebranded as lifestyle porn. We're literally masturbating to the idea of societal collapse while ordering artisanal emergency food kits with our smartphones. But underneath all this sexualized destruction fantasy is something deeper. We're horny for authenticity. We're aroused by the idea of a world where your value isn't measured by your productivity or your social media engagement, but by your ability to actually do something meaningful. In the end, nobody cares about your resume, just how fast you can build a fire. That's not just a quote, that's a sexual proposition. It's caveman romance for people who spend their days in cubicles under fluorescent lights wondering if any of this matters. The collapse fantasy is ultimately about returning to a world where human connection matters more than human networking, where physical strength matters more than intellectual property, where knowing how to grow food matters more than knowing how to growth hack your startup. And of course, there's a dark side to all this erotic collapse fascination, and it's the voyeurism. It's one thing to fantasize about surviving the apocalypse. It's another thing entirely to fetishize other people's actual suffering. Because here's another uncomfortable truth. While you're getting off on collapse porn, actual collapse is happening to actual people. Climate refugees aren't having sexy survival adventures. They're dying. Economic collapse isn't liberating people from their LinkedIn bios. It's making them homeless. Wars are happening. Your post-apocalyptic sex fantasy isn't someone else's Tuesday morning of trying to find clean water. People are starved in Africa, and others are being burnt in the Middle East. But we'll get to the moral complication in a minute, because first, we need to talk about what happens when the arousal wears off. Is this just nihilism and drag? When fascination with collapse hides depression, loneliness, or just plain old-fashioned impotence in the face of actual problems that could actually be solved if we actually tried. Because let's be real, there's a difference between being turned on by the idea of societal transformation and being secretly relieved that you won't have to deal with your own life anymore because there won't be a society left to fail in. Nihilism is the belief that all values are baseless and that nothing can be known or communicated, often associated with extreme pessimism and a radical skepticism that condemns existence. But we've made it sexy. We've made it aesthetic. We've turned nothing matters into nothing matters, and isn't that kind of hot?
Oh my God.
Studies show that whatever motivates nihilism, that feeling that life and the universe have no meaning or purpose, can also motivate depression and suicide. So when your collapsed fantasy starts feeling less like empowerment and more like escape, you might want to ask yourself what you're really escaping from. Here's where we need to make a crucial distinction. It's one thing to roleplay collapse. It's another to wish for it. It's the difference between fetish and fatalism, between fantasy and actually wanting people to suffer so you can feel better about your own life. Fatalism is the belief that all events are decided by fate and cannot be changed, a kind of resigned acceptance that everything's screwed and there's nothing anyone can do about it, which, let's be honest, is a pretty convenient philosophy if you don't want to take responsibility for anything. But here's the thing. It's often just nihilism with a fancy philosophical degree. It's giving up agency and calling it wisdom. It's choosing despair and calling it realism. If society collapses, you will not have to worry about whether you're successful by society's standards. If civilization ends, you don't have to deal with the fact that you're lonely, or that your job is meaningless, or that you're not living up to your potential, or that you've been scrolling through your phone for 3 hours instead of doing something productive. The apocalypse becomes the ultimate excuse for not dealing with your actual problems. Why should I work on my relationship when the world's ending? Why should I pursue my dreams when capitalism is collapsing? Why should I go through therapy when we're all going to be fighting over canned goods anyway? But here's the plot twist. The world is not ending. Not in the way your fantasies suggest anyway. It's changing? Sure. It's chaotic? Absolutely. But it's not ending. I'm sorry to tell you that. And you still have to live in it. And your problems are still your problems, even if the stock market crashes and the ice cap melts. So, how do you know when you've crossed the line from healthy apocalypse fantasizing into unhealthy escape mechanism? Here's the test. When you're no longer entertained by collapse scenarios, you might be ready to act. Real engagement with the world's problems doesn't feel sexy or thrilling. It feels like work, boring, incremental, often frustrating work. Community organizing isn't as exciting as imagining yourself as the lone survivor with a crossbow. But here's the thing. The people who are actually trying to prevent or mitigate collapse don't have time to fetishize it. They're too busy doing the unglamorous work of trying to build something better. If you're spending more time consuming collapse content than you are engaging with collapse prevention, you might want to ask yourself whether you're actually concerned about the future or just addicted to the anxiety it provides. Real shadow work isn't about integrating your apocalypse fantasies into your spiritual practice. It's about asking yourself what those fantasies are protecting you from feeling. Are you fascinated by collapse because you're genuinely concerned about systematic issues? Or because collapse fantasies give you permission to stop trying to make your actual life work? Are you drawn to survival scenarios because you want to be useful and authentic? Or because they're more exciting than the mundane work of becoming useful and authentic in the world as it currently exists? Are you horny for the apocalypse? Or are you just horny for life that feels like it matters? Because if collapse fantasies are your primary source of meaning and excitement, what does that say about how you're living right now? Now that we've dissected this beautiful twisted psychology of apocalypse worship, what the hell do we do with it? I want to leave you with a thought that might completely reframe everything we've just talked about. Maybe we're not turned on by the end of the world. Maybe we're just desperate for a new one. Maybe collapse isn't doom. Maybe it's clearing, like a forest fire that looks devastating but actually creates the conditions for new growth. The phoenix doesn't just die, it transforms. Even in the face of death and destruction, there's always the potential for new life and new beginnings. Just as seasonal changes show forests appearing to die only to burst forth with new growth each spring. What if your fantasy about society collapsing isn't really about watching everything burn? What if it's about watching everything that doesn't work burn away so something better can grow in its place? The systems that make you feel powerless, disconnected, and inauthentic, what if they're not permanent? What if they're just current? What if they're already changing? Already mutating, already becoming something else, and your collapsed fantasies are just your intuition recognizing that transformation is inevitable. Creative destruction is fundamentally a cycle of death and rebirth. The cycle of life, death, and rebirth reflects themes of renewal and transformation that appear across cultures and spiritual practices. So here's my proposition. If you're gonna fetishize something, let it be rebirth, not just rubble. Because here's the thing about endings. They're never really endings. They're mutations. Evolution doesn't stop. It just changes direction. So the next time you catch yourself scrolling through disaster headlines at 2 a.m., getting that weird little thrill from reading about supply chain failures and climate catastrophes, ask yourself, what am I really hungry for here? Are you hungry for destruction? Really? Or are you hungry for transformation? Are you fantasizing about the end of the world? Or are you fantasizing about the beginning of a world that makes sense? Today's weird thing was falling in love with your own extinction. Tomorrow's weird thing, well, we'll have to wait and see what fresh psychological territory humanity decides to explore. I was your host, Charlie, reminding you to stay curious, stay chaotic, and remember, the world doesn't end. It mutates. And sometimes, if we're very lucky, it mutates into something beautiful.
I love you.
Mom, somebody just followed me.